So the first thing we're going to do before Mayor Warner comes up here is we're going to just introduce the folks that are sitting up here on the dais. And I'll start over here with my far left. If you go ahead and just introduce yourself, name and position.
I'm Johnny Villarreal, Public Works Director.
I'm Chris Otto, City Engineer.
And I'm Bill Hill, the city manager.
Hi, my name is Sohail Shakil. I'm with the J3 Project Manager.
I'm Mario Valdez with J3, the operations center.
Look at Mayor Warner.
I want to thank all of you folks for coming out. We appreciate it. This is a part of the way ahead for the street planning for the city of Chavano Park. I want to recognize Alderman Powers, Alderman Miller, and Alderman Couts who are here as well. Thank you for coming and joining us today. Chavano Park has a plan, and part of that plan is Days of Zavala, and Days of Zavala will be completed about 25 years earlier than we expected it would be completed, because our Congressman Tony Gonzalez was able to secure for us a $4 million grant. And with the drainage that's going to be a part of this project and the sidewalks and making this accessible and having a connectivity to Northwest Military and on to Days of Zavala in San Antonio and Loch El Selma, we're going to spend that money. It is going to be something that at the end of the project we're all going to be proud of, and we're going to have a city that looks like the city that we live in and that we want to live in. There's going to be a presentation. After the presentation, I'm going to be holding the microphone. If you would raise your hand, I will come to you and let you use the microphone so that we can all hear what you have to say. So if you just raise your hand and hold a second, I'm not as young as I used to be, but I'll be right there. Bill?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Next slide. So this is the overview, and just a summary slide. We kind of mentioned it before. We wrote a number of articles associated with that. The primary purpose of the project is to fix the drainage that goes from the municipal track. It goes underneath Days of All, then it goes through some easements down Ripple Creek and then across. And as part of that, obviously, and you'll see that we're going to be moving that water along Days of All instead of into the neighborhood, a big portion of it, but we'll be adding bike lanes and raised curved sidewalks as we move through there. Additionally, there's a section of environmental friendly parking, and then with additional funds, we're going to be doing some reconstruction of some of the roads in Chavano Creek, and we'll get to more details of that. Next slide. This is the outline of the schedule, and I'm going to have J3 kind of go through that as we move forward. I'll turn it over to them.
So the project overall is 1 year time period, 1 year long. It will be done in phases. First phase is relatively small. It's on the north side of temporary widening to give enough space for two-way traffic. And then we'll be working on the south side, which is the biggest part of our project, is the storm drain. It's a pretty large 54-inch diameter pipe, concrete pipe, which will run down the road, taking the water, like it said earlier, down to Almost Creek. And then once the storm drain is done, then the street will be reconstructed on that side. Then traffic swapped and street reconstructed on the north side. All the driveways will be redone. 19 driveways, I believe, are part of our project. We'll go back with exactly the same material, which is currently there on those driveways. And our final part of the project will be final pavement. And there is some parking lot expansion for overflow parking close to City Hall, and then last part of the project is Post Oak Way and Cinnamon Oak has a portion of it which is getting reconstructed. So that's more of an overview of our schedule.
Okay.
Next slide, please.
All right. So to get in kind of some of the details of what we're doing, this is existing Days of Zavala Road. It's roughly 41 feet of existing pavement. with 2 travel lanes, 1 in each direction, and bike lanes on either side. Next slide. And this is what we're proposing to do. We're two travel lanes. We're reducing those to 11 foot. If you saw in the previous, they were about 13 feet. We're reducing them to 11 feet, which helps control speed of traffic. And then we're adding a 2-foot buffer on either side, and then a 4-foot bike lane on either side. That the buffer and smaller lanes provides better safety for bicyclists. We are putting in raised curbs on this, so the water that lands in De Zavala is going to stay in De Zavala and be collected in the storm sewer system that I'll talk about in a moment. And we are putting sidewalks on both sides of the road. We are in the Edwards-Arkleford recharge zone, and so we were limited in what we could do as far as increasing impervious cover. So this does increase impervious cover slightly with the new sidewalk additions, but we're able to treat that through vegetated filter swells on the side of the roadway. And there is no right-of-way acquisition. We're doing all of this within the existing right-of-way. Next slide. Back in 2017, 2018, we did the stormwater master plan for Chavano Park, and area 4-2 Ripple Creek was identified as a area of concern due to flooding along that natural creek. And a lot of the water that drains there comes off of the Muni Tract through a culvert system and under De Zavala. With this project, we are going to collect that water on the north side of De Zavala in a 54-inch pipe, and then we're going to route it down De Zavala and directly into Almost Creek, which will significantly reduce the amount of water that goes towards Ripple Creek during storm events. There will still be localized flow that drains to that area, so we're not removing the water entirely. Localized water is still going to drain there, but we are removing the majority of the flooding source. Next slide. This is a rather steep area. This is just a topographic map that shows the elevation changes within Chavano Park. And next slide. And this shows the location of where we're going to collect that water. If you can see on the left-hand side, there's a concrete head wall where water currently goes underneath De Zavala. And then on the right-hand side, you can see underneath the fence, the light shining through. That's where the water goes underneath the road, or towards Ripple Creek. With this project, we are going to significantly increase the size of this. Right now, I think it's 3 18-inch pipes that are there. And we'll be putting in a 54-inch pipe, which has significantly increased capacity to convey water under De Zavala and down to Almost Creek. Next slide. As part of this project, at Bikeway, there is a site distance concern coming off of Bikeway onto De Zavala. If you've ever done it, it's difficult to see cars coming from the hill. And so we looked at some options to improve that situation to make it safer. On the top left-hand side, you can see the black line, the hilltop, and then several lines shooting off of it. Those are site distance lines trying to identify how we could improve site distance. We looked at multiple options ranging from shaving the top of the hill 1/2 foot up to 2 feet. Through coordination with city staff and then in presentations to city council, we determined that 1.5 foot provided the good safety without overly complicating the project and increasing cost. It did increase cost, but going that extra 1/2 foot increased cost significantly. And so the 1.5 foot was a good balance. It actually will improve site distance by approximately 62 feet, which you can see 62 feet further down the road, which will make getting off of Bikeway much safer than it currently is. The blue line, that's the one that we're going with. Next slide.
As part of the project, the staging area that the J3 will be using and you commonly see used as voter overflow, the market, and then event overflow right behind us back here. We're going to be funding a new environmental friendly parking lot, basically expanding that and taking advantage of that. It's going to create 68 spaces in the area right behind the municipal track, and then additional 106 parking spaces for overflow parking, which includes some along Zavala. So if you come to the event on Saturday here, you'll see that there'll be people parking. All the way back here is pretty disjointed and disorganized. There'll be people parking in along Zavala, kind of perpendicular. All that's going to be formalized, and we'll have that part of the project. So this is just another slide of the same thing. It's part of the plans. Conceptually, you can understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide additional parking for all the events that we have, and we're taking advantage of the funding opportunity tied to this project and the construction at the same time. Next slide.
So with the improvements that we're doing on Zavala, we are going to have to reconstruct 19 driveways throughout the project limits. Generally speaking, our intent is to reconstruct the driveway from the new edge of pavement to the existing right-of-way. There are 3 driveways where we are going to have to do driveway penetrations because we are shaving the top of that hill 1.5 feet. In order to get to tie into the existing, we're going to have to go into the property. These may range from 5 to 20 feet. We're going to get with those property owners individually and discuss the details of that with them. But I did want to make note of that. The driveways that we reconstruct, we will be reconstructing with the same material they are today. So if they're asphalt, we're going to put asphalt back. If they're concrete, we're going to put concrete back. Next slide.
Okay, while we're constructing driveways and roadway, all homeowners will have access to their properties at all times. There might be very temporary time periods when, for example, say if we're placing asphalt and going through in front of the driveway, we'll have plenty of heads up, notice given to those homeowners, and we will do our best to do that work kind of 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. when people are away from the homes, so to minimize any disruptions. Like I said, driveways will be constructed with the same material going back, and as we're doing the driveways, we'll give notice to those homeowners when their driveway will be constructed. Same thing for mailboxes. If there are any mailboxes in conflict and we need to put a temporary mailbox, we'll do so, and we'll replace, if necessary, to match the existing mailboxes. Post office deliveries will not have any disruptions, and there are no community mailboxes will be set up, so individual mailboxes will be furnished back.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, on the last project we did community mailboxes in the early phase of that, and that was not well received, understandably so. And so in the later phases of that one, the phase 1A, y'all probably saw mailboxes in 5-gallon buckets full of concrete. That's what we'll do on this one, so that we can roll the mailboxes out of the way when we need to and then roll them back into place so that mail can be delivered and picked up. Something else that we don't mention on here, but I did want to make note of, is trash service will continue just like it always has. Throughout construction, we'll make sure that the trash service is available, and we'll coordinate with the postmaster as necessary to make sure that mail is also delivered.
Public Works crews will be replacing 2 water mains, one located at Painted Post, the other at Bikeway, in efforts to lower the water main on that crossing and establish new PVC water main in that area. We'll also be putting in the new crossing with casing as well. And we should have that done coordinating with our contractor. Zavala. Next slide. It's already started. So we've currently installed 2 isolation valves on either side of Zavala, and that isolation valve is allowing us to keep that main isolated from construction. So when they do get down into that area to rehab the road, that water main's completely out of service. So we have no water mains currently right now that are crossing Zavala that are in service. They're all out of service, and we're looping water another way around to residents on the new old side. We're also, the CPS gas mains, there aren't going to be any conflicts there as well. And we're currently, there are no utility poles in conflict, and also communication with any kind of fiber lines are not going to be in conflict as well. So we'll be looking good with other utilities in the area as well.
So as this project wraps up, we are going to be assessing the cost and the funds that we have available. We have committed to reconstructing part of Post Oak Way, and we hope to, I'll point it out in a minute, there's really 3 segments. We really want to be able to do all 3, barring any significant cost overruns during the first parts of these phases. So the primary focus is this piece right here from Lock Hill, Selma, all the way to Cinnamon Oak. That's priority 1. And priority 2 is from the Huebner entrance along Cinnamon Oak all the way to Post Oak Way there. And priority 3 is an extension here. We basically did a street assessment with the engineers, and we've determined that that was the first part of Chavanel Park that was built. And when they built those roads, they did those roads different than they did the majority of the rest of Chavanel Creek over there. And the base level needs to, these roads need to be reconstructed. So we're going to go down and not just take off the asphalt and put 2 inches of new asphalt on it. We're going to go down, I think it's 7 inches, 7.5, okay. I don't know if I have another slide on that or not. Yeah, I did. Yeah, there you go. So, again, we have plans to do that, all 3 of those priorities, and we want to. We think we can do it. We've set and enabled the project to be able to do that. We're going to make that call about 1/3 of the way through the project. And I might note that when we go through and we put that 54-inch drainage culvert in, at time, I think the deepest area we're going to go down is 20 feet. Because, from where the water outflows from the municipal track to go down to Olmos Creek, you got to go uphill. And so we're going to have to dig it to keep it flowing downhill. So it's a pretty significant project at that point where there's 20 feet. And so it's been engineered. We did core samples on it. We're pretty optimistic that we're not going to have any issues with that, but that's where we are. The 7.5 inches total. Curbs that are damaged will be repaired, but a fairly simple project. It's not too complicated, but we hope that will significantly improve that area there. Next slide. Okay. Well, we'll let Curtis talk this. He's our communications expert, so.
So if you lived on the old side of Chavanel Park, you're probably familiar with this and maybe already signed up. Or as we're moving into a new part of the city, the fastest way to get information to you is through a texting service. We have Text.my.gov. If you just use your phone camera and you scan this QR code, it's going to sign you up for COSPROAD. If you want to text it manually, you can do it to 91896. It just simply asks you, do you want to sign up for receive communications from us after that? There's no charge. You don't have to create an account. You don't have to remember credentials. You don't have to download an app. This is very simple. It's just through text communications. If you hate it, if we're chirping at you too much, you can tell it to stop with all caps. It's very simple to get out of it once we're done with the project. But we try to send out timely updates as we're getting them, meeting with J3, knowing what's come down the pipe, if there's going to be delays, there could be rain, there could be other challenges as we get through this project, and we try to communicate that out to the residents in a timely manner throughout it. So if you just scan this QR code, we'd also have a poster board you could go over and scan it after it's done.
So the good news for you all is we've gone through the Northwest Military Highway expansion, and we had to go through all the communications requirements and keeping those folks informed. And then we went through the whole reconstruction of the roads on the east side, and street by street, you know, there was a lot of demands and a lot of information. We got very good at that. So our team, I'm very proud of Curtis and our team working with the engineers and the contractors of being able to communicate with the residents multiple ways, which included door hangers, communications push from the city, knocking on doors, notice. We try to get notice to all those things. Anything that schedule changes and stuff like that, we try to quickly communicate.
Hey, Curtis, I get text notifications sometimes on Loop 1604. Is that through the same, or did I sign up for something different that I forgot about?
I don't know what TxDOT uses, but I'm guessing they have something they built themselves rather than TextMyGov, which is a small company from Utah.
Okay.
Next slide. And before we get into just the general questions and answers, I also wanted to mention that throughout the whole process, we're giving updates to City Council. Typically, we have a meeting with the contractors every 2 weeks, and we bring in the city engineers, city staff, the contractors. We have a separate street inspector, and we hired Pape Dawson to do that. That team is out there with one individual typically every day. They're in many ways our eyes and ears. I know that staff also is out there. Johnny and his public works team is helping the contractors in anything that they might do in abnormal. We'll have a very robust communications with the contractors. There'll be presence out there every day, and we'll try to anticipate those things we can. I also have been afforded a road advisory committee, okay? So the City Council has appointed 3 residents of Chavano Park, 2 of them which are here. One of them is a civil engineer. He's not here today. He lives in Willowwood, but he has been with us throughout the whole process on Phase 1 Alpha, been very, very helpful. Another one is Al Whaley, a longtime resident. He lives on Bikeway. He helps, his expertise is with process management and problem solving. He's also the committee chair for the Water Advisory Committee. And Bill Thorpe is a resident in Chavano Park. He works for the San Antonio Street and Maintenance Division, so he's got expertise in doing on this. So we have a great team, and they come to these meetings with us. They advise us, and they're a big help. So we appreciate that. So at this point in time, we'll open it up for any general questions and answers. And then just keep in mind, afterwards, we're going to have our engineers, and J3 will be over there. You can look at the plans in front of your house. You can ask them any specific questions you might have, give them warnings or so forth.
Okay. It looks like Maggie has a question over in the back. I'm going to head over there. As I do, I'd like to know whether in the East Side project we allowed people to substitute their asphalt with a concrete opening at their additional expense. Will that be available in this project?
More than likely, we haven't talked to the contractor about that, but if someone wanted to, had an asphalt and wanted to do a concrete, what we did with the previous company was they worked up the measurements, they came up with a cost difference, and then those residents paid us, and then we paid you the cost difference. We kept it up. And it really wasn't a large volume, even though there's many, many more houses on that side. We may have done 15 or 20 of them, so, yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, I was gun jumping Maggie's question right there. Bill, I did have a question. As the water goes underneath, there's a berm and there's some concrete culvert that's on the south side of De Zavala. Who is going to be responsible for the continuing maintenance for that after we finish off what we're doing right now?
Which portion, Mayor?
I'm talking about south of De Zavala, where we could see the fence and the water goes underneath, and there's some berms that are already in place.
Yeah.
And then there's also some concrete that's in place as well.
Yeah, in the right-of-way, which is basically from telephone pole to telephone pole, that's city property. And then the water currently goes under that road, and it passes through that brick wall. It's not a brick wall. There's a big swell, so to speak, that the water goes through that. There's actually a drainage easement that goes through 4 individual property owners on Ripple Creek. It's fenced off in between. It's not a high lot of maintenance. In theory, the residents is responsible. We work with the residents there, our public works, and it hasn't been a big problem.
Okay, I just wanted to. Yes, sir. Wait.
Thanks for your presence here. I live on Painted Post.
If you could get a little bit closer.
Sure. About 2 or 3 doors off of De Zavala. So, man, when those floods come through, it's impressive. It's not a big deal. We love being there. It's a great place to be. I'm sure all that water is why we have all the great trees and relatively good soil, but it knocks down fences. It goes into the pool. You know, it's kind of a pain, but you know, it's more dramatic than anything else. But I think we may be the worst in that area. But you're talking. What is that creek? I'm sorry, I've lived there for 17 years, and that's Almost Creek. That's just a dinky little. So I think of Almost Creek as being almost Greenway, or that's part of that. Okay, so that's
Okay.
Almost Creek there. I always thought it was.
Here's what you're talking about, right here.
Well,
You're right. Painted Post is somewhere right in here, and that's a tributary. It's not the big creek.
right.
This is the big creek almost part. And so what this water does, the water comes this way, and this way. The water that is collected from here is going to be diverted. That's going to reduce the amount of water that goes through your property.
Okay. I assumed that was how that was going to work.
That's the whole
but
purpose of this.
I got you.
And
But
really, the key is where Ripple Creek is right here, that area has to be shut off. I mean, we have to barricade that. We've done it 5 or 6 times since I've been here, maybe more. That's the hazard that we're specifically trying to mitigate.
Okay, so maybe I don't understand the map there on the left. De Zavala is that's where the culvert. That's the big line there.
And the culvert's right here. The water that used to go this way is now going to go this way.
So Painted Post is where?
It's right here. I mean, somehow it goes like this. We don't know.
Follow the words, Painted Post. I mean, the words are on top of the road.
Yeah. Okay, here is Painted Post right here.
I'm sorry, I can't see where you're indicating.
You see the,
This is Painted Post.
Well, I see it there, but on the other
It's
map.
right here.
Yeah, so that the creek that I'm talking about. So that culvert is actually north. That's the creek that's in my backyard.
Yes.
Right. That's not
That's
Almost
Almost
Creek. That's Almost Creek? Okay. I didn't know that. We always called it Chavano Creek, but I don't know the terms.
are you at 102, you said?
106.
106. I'm going to Google you real quick so I know where that is.
So that culvert, how is that culvert going to divert water away from that?
It's not. So the culvert, we're gonna collect water up here. So what you see in the red and the blue and the green, that is the existing conditions flood inundation area. I call it flood inundation area because floodplain is very specific to this. But this is the area subject to flooding. And so roughly half of the watershed that comes this way is coming from north of De Zavala. And so we're collecting all of that water and bypassing it directly into Almost Creek. So instead of this water coming down to here, we're shortcutting it over here. It's not going to cross the street. We're going to collect it. What you don't see on here is a little bitty L where we collect it on the north side, we route it to the south side, and then we go underneath the pavement in a 54-inch pipe.
And is there some overflow that will come through here if this gets clogged up?
If it gets clogged up, yes, but the
Yeah.
chances of a 54-inch pipe clogging are
Or if we have a
capacity.
Or if we have a 200-year flood.
If you have a 200-year flood, all bets are off.
This is not designed for a 200-year flood.
I was waiting for that one. It is putting water in Almost Creek earlier or further upstream than it naturally goes. And that was a concern of mine when this idea was first brought to me. And so we did run a hydrology analysis, and we did verify that it is not going to increase the peak discharge of Almost Creek between the new entry point and the pre-project entry point. The watershed that drains, I can get really detailed on this and nerdy if y'all want, but the watershed that drains to the culvert crossing on Zavala has a time of concentration of 20 or 30 minutes. Almost Creek at this point has a time of concentration of over an hour. And so the water will flow through the 54-inch pipe and be gone before Almost Creek ever peaks. And I can get a lot nerdier with it if you want to talk offline, but it's not going to adversely impact Almost Creek. It's going to go directly into the creek. We're tying into the existing culvert system underneath the road. Oh, Almost Creek absolutely has a problem, but improving Almost Creek is well beyond the scope of this project. Almost Creek by itself is deep into the 8 figures to fix.
Also, part of the Almost Creek problem is that years and years ago, before the FEMA maps were as good as they are now, people got building permits to put fences into the Almost Basin. We haven't forced people to take those fences out. We're not issuing new building permits to build new fences into the Almost Basin, but there are historical buildings and fencing that is in the Almost Basin, and those things come down because they're in the FEMA floodplain. That's happened for the last 37 years that I've been here.
One thing that has also helped with the water flow is north of our city, north of 1604, Denton had a project in conjunction with the rock quarry, and they've put an area where they have taken a whole bunch of the water that used to flow down into the creek and went down the Almost Creek. They have sidelined all that water, and the basin they use up there can hold, I think they said, 2 100-year floodplains. So they have reduced the water coming into the top part of Almost Creek. I don't know the exact numbers, but I feel quite confident that has reduced the total flow into that creek.
Yeah, so that I
remember the
I
year?
actually worked at the city of San Antonio when they designed that, and I permitted it. I don't remember the exact year, but that would have been 2006, 2007 when they permitted and constructed that. It does hold 2 100-year storms fully back to back because that's what I made them do. And so that has significantly reduced the amount of water that comes down Almost Creek since 2007-ish.
So you've lived in your current location since when? 2008. So you may or may not be familiar that 2 significant recent flood events, obviously we had one 2 weeks ago here in that small cell that was right over the airport, and the 11 fatalities at the Perrin Vital access road. If you have that much rain almost anywhere, you're going to overwhelm whatever drainage systems are covering that. But in 1998 and 2002, there were 2 significant rain events that occurred in San Antonio. And I wasn't here then, but the stories are that much of Chavano Park was flooded, different parts. And we've been able to mitigate some of that. You have events like that, you're going to have flooding where there has not been flooding ever before. And because typically the requirements are to build for 25 or 50-year flood events, I think. What's the
25 and 100 is the criteria that we used. If the drainage area is greater than 100 acres, then we use a 100-year design storm. If it's less than 100 acres, we use a 25-year design storm. I should note this 54-inch pipe is designed for a 25-year storm because the drainage area is, I don't remember exactly offhand, it's like 30 or 40 acres, so well below 100.
Yeah, go ahead.
The entrance into Chavano Creek at Blackjack Oak, there's a ditch there, and I know you've shown pictures of the width of the improvement to Zavala. As that creek goes down toward Almus, I mean, you can see the creek just get deeper and deeper and deeper. Are we going to do something with that area?
There's no plans to do that right now, Carlos. We did a drainage study in 2017. We identified, I think it was, 16 areas of focus, of interest. Chris and his team ran the hydrology models. And so while you do have a lot of water going through that piece, it's very fast. It's not prone to flooding unless there is a significant storm event. And just to clarify, the two 100, Martin Marietta has a quarry up there. Of course, they've been digging in it quite a bit, and they've lowered and they've created a bowl there, right? I mean, you guys, it's like a lot of like the quarry and like where SeaWorld and a lot of different places are. Eventually, that'll be developed to some degree. Part of that land was owned by Bitterblue and the Rogers family, who were the original developers of the 7,000 acres in Chavano Park. And as part of a deal working with Bitterblue and Denton communities right after the 2002 storm event, they agreed to put these detention ponds in there, 2 of them that Chris worked on. And even though you've lived there since 2006 or 8 or whenever it was you lived there, I am telling you that it is much better because of those 2 100-year detention ponds. And so that's going to save us a lot from there. That doesn't mean it's still not bad, and when you have those things that occur. That could be something that, I could go put eyes on and look at it, just see what it is. I mean, it's obviously beyond the scope of this, but.
It is going to increase the volume of water that goes into Almost Creek at that location. However, the timing of when it comes in, it's not going to increase the peak discharge or the maximum flow rate, and it will not increase water surface elevation or velocity.
And so a lot of that water is coming from way up north of Chavano Park, too, and that streams. And so the rain event that occurs, it's kind of delayed.
Hello. We were here for that 100 in 88. We moved in 88, so I think it happened in 89 where we got 10 inches of rain and everything, so I understand. Yeah, we did. And so, but my question is, on Zavala, in the morning traffic, 5 o'clock traffic, the line gets extremely long, especially when school's in session. Is there any way possible to have a turning lane rather than sidewalks? Because I don't see anybody using the sidewalks on Northwest Military. And so, with that space allowed it, I mean, we could use a turning lane so that we won't stop the traffic. No, I'm talking about Bikeway. I live on Bikeway. So it's a turning lane on Zavala. Yeah, because there's a lot of traffic.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. Like you have, yeah, just a turn lane. It was considered, I can tell you that, and we worked through the in the planning stages with our committee, who had an engineer. We worked with our engineers. We briefed city council. That was discussed, and based upon the scope and the funds that we had available, that didn't.
I'm just saying that the traffic's going to get worse, just like Lock Hill. Lock Hill's traffic is horrible. It's going to get that way in Zavala.
Yeah.
And the next question is that the creek, is that going to be dug up or raised up, or the street going to be raised up or something? Because that water flow is going to be really strong too.
Where are you talking about the water flow?
The creek, the one that's
At Almost
Zavala,
Creek.
on Zavala. Yeah.
So we are not doing any improvements to the creek or to Almost Creek at Zavala, nor are we doing any significant improvements to Zavala at that location. We're not elevating the road. That is something that we had considered, but it was beyond the scope of this project and the funding. If we were to raise Zavala, that would trigger FEMA requirements. Yeah, and so doing any modifications at that location would trigger a lot of additional environmental and FEMA requirements, and it was just beyond the scope of what this project could afford to do.
I think you're talking about excavating the existing creek to make it deeper. Yeah, and so, that's, in theory, that, it would be a good thing, but practice doing that would be very difficult with all the rock that's there. I mean, that's a major. Yeah, that was over there by Elm Creek. Yeah, I heard it was a retired colonel and his wife in either the 1998 or 2002. Someone was telling me about that, and they probably did a $4 or $5 million drainage project to fix that. Yeah.
Bill, could you tell us a little bit about the bridge on Zavala and how many more years we're going to be able to get that? I've been here a really long time. I don't remember that the water, even when we had the gigantic flood where we had 10 inches in an hour in Chavano Park across most of the city, I don't believe that in that year that the water actually went over the top of the bridge. Yeah, but it didn't go over. But that was a 500-year flood.
So you were here. Did the water ever top over the road?
It went just under the bridge. Yeah, we're not engineering any of our roads for 500-year floods. I don't think there's a road in Chavano Park that's engineered for that. And that's not what we're going to be doing here. Well,
if it were to happen, our public works crew does have barriers, and we do that on Lock Hill Selma quite a bit. If you're going south on Lock Hill Selma in a big rain event, the whole right lane is pretty much full of water, and we try to bury it so people don't drive through it and plane off, and they're not going to drown, but they could have an accident very easily. And then at Ripple Creek, we're always barricading that. And a couple of other locations we've already fixed that we don't have to do that anymore.
Okay.
I'm at 100 painted posts. I don't feel like standing up.
Put it all the way up to your mouth, please.
So what we're saying, if we can, just for my edification here, we're looking at a white line that does not exist currently. We're looking at a blue line to the north of that, or toward the top of it, that goes through the Ripple Creek area. That is an existing area which that water flows across the street right there. And what we're saying is that water is not going to go across the street at all anymore. That's my question to start with. Does that culvert, you said 3 small culverts are going to become 1 big culvert. Does that big culvert cross the street and still drain into the Ripple Creek area?
No, it will not drain.
So nothing is going to cross the street like it does exist currently.
Correct.
It's going to flow down that road and then dump off into what we're calling Almost Creek, which is really just an empty nothing that crosses over the street right now.
Right, so in the picture that's on the screen right now, we will collect the water on the left-hand side of that image, and then we'll run a 54-inch pipe to the northbound lane, and then
And north is on the left.
north is on the right,
Oh, north is on the right of.
is northbound.
Oh, on the left of my left, right?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, at that point,
I'm with you.
We'll put in a junction box, and then the 54-inch pipe is going to run down that lane all the way to Almost Creek on the south side of the road, yes.
But if you look, there
yeah,
is
it's
a
'cause it
significant
runs
amount
that
of rain that comes in this way. And I've been to those houses during the rain events. So there is going to still be quite a bit of rain that crosses Ripple Creek. We're not collecting all of it.
What you said, though, is that's the stuff that exists in that space, not the stuff that's coming to that space, right? Like, if it's falling out of the sky,
Yeah.
it's going to still have to drain within that space.
Well, there is a drainage right here. You see this little thing right here? There is a significant amount of water that comes in through here from all the way up into here, and it drains this way, not just what falls there.
Oh, I got you. Because it's coming, because of the natural way that the land exists.
Right, so anything that falls north of De Zavala is going to be collected in the 54-inch pipe. Anything that falls south of De Zavala is going to continue to drain to Ripple Creek.
So my whole point of bringing all this up was just to say that I thought that, less water would end up being in that space than it currently is, because it no longer crosses the street where it doesn't even need to be crossing the street.
Correct.
Right?
We're reducing roughly 50% of the flow.
Yeah. And if it's a 100-year flood event, water will still come off the municipal track and go exactly where it has been going in the past, though.
Yes, so we designed it for a 25-year event, so during a 100-year event, some water is likely to overtop De Zavala and continue down Ripple Creek the way that it does today, but it's going to be significantly reduced from what it currently is. 98, 2002, 2007,
No.
last week.
About every 5. It's been about every 5. No,
and so
In theory, it's 100 years, but it seems like it's every 20 years.
well-
no, Bill, it's not every 20. It's been about every 10 that we've had something that was a 100-year flood or greater. We have been blessed with water, even though it's in a drought season right now. We have been blessed with water. Yes, sir.
What effect will the redirection of the water down De Zavala have, if any, on the properties that back up to the creek on the north side?
it won't have any effect.
None?
No, we've run the hydrology models, and as I mentioned earlier, the water that's coming out of that 54-inch pipe is going to be drained out before Almost Creek peaks. And so, I can't say none. I mean, early in the storm event, you might notice a little bit more water in the creek earlier than you used to, but it's going to be this compared to Almost Creek, which is this.
Second question. Right now during rush hour, if you try to turn left or across de Zavala to get onto your street, on the north side at least, cars will zoom past you on the right as you're trying to make your left turn, rather than stopping behind you. Will the sidewalks and the bike lane have any effect on that? Will that prevent that?
So that is something we discussed at one of the council meetings early on. By narrowing the lanes to 11 foot and then only providing the 2-foot buffer and a 4-foot bike lane, there is not enough room for a vehicle to pass you on the right-hand side unless they drive up on the sidewalk. Driving into a bike lane is illegal, and PD has said they will ticket people that drive in the bike lane.
Yeah, no.
For the project managers, time, any night work, or is it going to be 7 to 5, 8 to 5? What's the work hours?
I think normal work hours are 7 to 5, but if anything hinders access through driveways, we like to start a little bit later so everybody is at work or school. So it will be 9 to 4 then. Night work, I don't foresee any night work on this one.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. So what is the temporary accommodation for pedestrians and via bus stops during the construction? Just kind of a general thing that wasn't mentioned. And then my second question is, for citizens, who is their personal contact with the city if there's a question that they have during construction, or let's say they see something that's a little off, who do they need to contact?
Well, almost every citizen has my cell phone and the mayor's, so we get most of those calls all the time. But and we're happy to help. We'll need to coordinate with VIA. There is a bus stop or two. Of course, we have recent experience with that with the Northwest Military Highway. They established temporary stops, and we're able to accommodate as we needed to move forward. And those folks that use those stops called us all the time, and if there was any feedback, we were able to talk to the VIA to kind of adjust it to where it needed to go. You know, we'll be working with J3, but in the previous contractor, a lot of our notices provide a cell phone number to the project manager or the foreman that's on site, so that, and there's a much fewer notices and door hangers, because you're only talking a few properties that will be directly affected. I'm sure you'll get to know these guys very, very well. I mean, our residents were on a first name basis with Barry on the last project, and almost everybody had their cell phone number, and they were very, very responsive. I couldn't be happier with their ability to communicate directly with J3 and the people that were on the ground. But we'll be helping out.
One more question, please. On Bikeway, there's the cones that are on one side. Each house has cones. Why were they put there?
We did the, Johnny, if you'd address that,
yes,
where you did the shut-off valves.
Yes, the cones that are currently there, we have them set up just because we're allowing for settling and backfill in the area. It's actually where we made our upgrades to our water mains to allow for us to isolate the water main that's crossing the street there. So we can pick those up pretty quick here. We just want to assure that everything is settled out, not everything is filled in properly before we pick everything up. No, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. There are two sets of cones. There's Google Fiber cones as you go all the way down the street. And then there are two sets of cones that Johnny was talking about where we did shut-off valve work that he was
For the
just
isolation
describing.
valves.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Yes.
that's
More than
Google.
likely, those are Google Fiber.
Any more questions? I want to thank everybody for coming out. I want to thank Bill and Johnny on behalf for carrying the city's load here. Chris, appreciate all your efforts in developing this plan and working so diligently with city and with city council. J3, we're looking forward to a really great project. Thank y'all for coming out and answering our questions this evening. If anybody has any questions, Bill's telephone number's in the Roadrunner every month. My phone number's in the Roadrunner every month. And we're always happy to talk and tell your neighbors the same thing. Thank y'all very much for coming and being with us this evening.
And the engineer and J3 will be up here by the plans if you want to specifically address that.